here and you're following along on the videos, this thing, the camera up there, starts and stops on its own time. It doesn't start and stop according to my watch, and my watch is a little bit different than it. So I finish at, this is Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I finish at 8:55 according to my watch. This will stop probably a minute to 2 minutes earlier, all right? Just to let you know, if you're watching along on the lecture capture and it cuts off, that's why, okay? If there's more going on, you can get on YouTube and watch the very end there. Okay, we're picking up on, I think this is where we left off. Hold on a second. In the chapter Strider. And I think we mentioned the other day, Sam challenges Strider once or twice. They read the letter, and Sam again challenges, how do we know you're the real Strider? Strider stands up and says, you don't, and if I was a play-acting spy, I could kill you right now anyways and still take the ring, etc., etc. Frodo makes a comment, I think if you were a servant of Sauron, you would seem fairer and feel fouler. Now, say somebody says that to you. What's that make you feel like? What's he really saying? Did I talk about this the other day? Did I already? Okay, good. I get it, you guys, with my Tuesday, Thursday mixed up. How should Strider look? Should he be drop-dead, gorgeous, handsome? Should he be Chris Hemsworth or Viggo Mortensen? Because Viggo Mortensen was cat. No, he shouldn't be really handsome. He ought to have a rugged good looks. And I used to think he's a little too old now. Actually, he's not. He's getting close to the proper age. Sam Elliott. If you know who Sam Elliott is, look him up. He'd be perfect. Okay? He's got the right voice. He's got the right height. He's got the right build. He's like 6'6". He's tall. He's lanky. One of Strider's original names in Tolkien manuscripts was something like Longshanks. Okay? Long legs, did a lot of walking, etc., etc. Good looking, but not, either of the two I just mentioned. And he says, okay, I get it. And then he quotes the line from the verse. All that is gold does not glitter. Gold there doesn't refer to simply the metal gold. It means all that is precious. Isn't beautiful necessarily to look at, right? So, he says, but I am Strider, and I can help you. Okay. We're skipping a bunch. We're skipping Mary, the Black Riders, the Black Breath, the whole 9 yards. So the next morning they leave. They go off to Weathertop. Weathertop is an abandoned, ruined fortress. They make their way there, and while they're up there, Frodo sees Black Riders. They're like, shoot, they saw us. Because they're standing up on a flat, where you can be seen for miles around. So while there, Sam sings a little bit of a song, an old song, and Mary says, tell us more, page 191. Tell us of Gil-galad, an elven king, right? Who, if you read the Silmarillion, we get the fall of Gondolin and we get Gil-galad and all this great stuff, right? By the way, if you would all get into Tolkien as a result of this class, I really encourage you to read the Silmarillion. Even though it wasn't finished and completed by Tolkien, I think it's the best thing he wrote. I think it's better than The Lord of the Rings, simply because it's pure mythology. See, this has a very good narrative arc. Silmarillion doesn't. It's this story, this story, this story, this story, all very loosely connected. Okay? So, he says, no, I'm not going to tell you that story. Why? Because that story has to do with Sauron and the ring and blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to tell you. I'll tell you the tale of Luthien Tinuviel. Why does he tell the tale of Luthien Tinuviel? Well, there's at least a couple of reasons. One of which is because Strider is a descendant of Beren and Luthien. Okay? And one of the things Tolkien is doing throughout the Lord of the Rings is he's weaving this idea that the old tales never end. They just keep on going. Or as Shakespeare put it, we're all players on a stage. Our acts come, we enter the stage, we have our scenes, and then we leave. And new people enter and such. We're going to have Sam come to this realization later on. He's going to go, don't the old tales never end? And he's going to realize why we're in that same tale, right? He's going to have a very different outlook on the tale than Frodo will. We'll talk about that when we get to it. What's another reason? Because the tale that he tells is bound up, so to speak, with this tale. Okay? And he also says one thing about that story, about that tale, that song. He says, it is a sad tale. If I can find the exact spot. Talks about the king of Angmar. Talks about the Luthien chose immortality. Oh, where is it? Oh, it's at the beginning. Page 191. It is a long tale of which the end is not known, and there are none now except Elrond that remember it right as it was of old. It is a fair tale, that is, it's a beautiful story. Though it is sad, as are all the tales of Middle-earth. All the tales of Middle-earth are sad, he says. Why? Ask yourself why. As we go throughout this story, and we hear story after story after story, we hear tales and legends told again and again and again, or new ones. Why does Strider say they are all sad? I'm not going to give an answer. I just want you to think about that, okay? So, the Black Riders attack. What does Frodo do? Brought two with me today because I got to get them resized. He puts on the ring. Why? He's tempted to. Okay? What happens when he puts it on? He can see the Black Riders as clear as day. Can he see his companions? No. They're now in the shadows. Okay? Why can he see them clear as day? He's entered their world. Remember, what were the Black Riders originally? Men? What kinds of men? Kings. They were all kings. Okay? They held the rings. They possessed the rings for so long that the rings did what? Possessed them. And Gandalf told Frodo, back in the Shadow of the Past, what happens when a ring finally completely possesses you? You fade. You become a shadow. You dwell in the shadow realm. Frodo puts the ring on, he enters their realm. Okay? Not only can he see them, they can see him very clearly. Right? So, the captain of the nine stabs Frodo in the arm. Frodo slashes him back, but doesn't hit him. He does have a physical body of sorts, okay? Slashes his cloak. But he also cries out, well, Elbereth Gilthoniel. Elbereth Gilthoniel is the queen of the gods. A lot of readers have taken this to be like, because of Tolkien's Catholicism, Hail Mary full of grace. It's like a prayer to Manwë's consort. Manwë's the king of the gods, right? So, he's wounded. Aragorn gives him a little aid because he has the hands of healing and such. And they make their way to the fort of Bruin. Who shows up to help guide them, to accompany them? This is where the movie will completely fail you. Glorfindel, an elf of the House of Elrond, not one of Elrond's sons. Elrond is the half-elven. Glorfindel's 100% pure elf. All right? Nor is it Arwen Evenstar. So why does Peter Jackson put Arwen in there?
Romance.
Nope. Has nothing to do with romance. Good guess. Because he believed there were not enough strong female characters in the story. And he actually says this in an interview. His demographic, what he thought were going to be the people seeing the movie, was primarily going to be young men, teenage, early 20s. But the odds are they would be seeing the movie with girlfriends. And so he wants something for the, for the girlfriends to be able to latch onto, so to speak. Yeah, you're completely stupid. Stupid thing on his part. Because it also creates huge problems, okay, later on and such. So, he gets to the ford of Bruinen, which separates where they are from the land of Rivendell. And Frodo rides across, and when he gets on the other side of the ford, he turns around and he stands up in his stirrups. And he holds up his little, Western-esque sword, dagger, and says, page 214. Now, some of the Black Riders have entered the river after him, including the captain of the Nine. Witch King of Angmar, right? Did we talk about the Witch King of Angmar and all that kind of stuff a little bit? Okay. And Frodo says, go back to the land of Mordor, follow me no more. His voice sounded thin and shrill in his own ears. The riders halted, but Frodo had not the power of Bombadil. His enemies laughed at him with a harsh and chilling laughter. Come back. To Mordor we will take you. Go back. He whispers. Why is he whispering? Why was his voice high and shrill? Because the ring is taking control. And he's wounded. Okay? Go back. The ring, they say. By Elbereth and Luthien the Fair. So, Queen of the Gods and kind of Queen of Elves here in Middle Earth, so to speak. Luthien was, make sure I get this right. Luthien was not pure elf. Luthien is the daughter, I don't have time for this, of Thingol, who is an elf king, in Melian, who is a Maya, one of the Maiar. That is an angelic being, or a lesser godlike being. You have I don't have time for this. You have the Valar and the Maiar. The Maiar, or the Valar, you could call, if you want, the high gods. And the Maiar are the lesser gods. Okay? So, in the Christian mythological sense, these would be like the top three levels in Christian theology. There are 9 ranks of angels. The lowest, the servant, angel rank is just angel. Angel just means messenger, angelos. Okay, so these would be like the cherubim and seraphim, thrones, principalities, powers, way up there. These are everyday garden variety angels, right? Gabriel and Michael are up here, so to speak, right? So, Luthien is the daughter of one of these. So she's half goddess and half elf. So, by Elbereth and Luthien the Fair, you shall have neither the ring nor me. And the leader, captain of the Nine, lord of the Nazgul, witch king of Angmar, stands up in his stirrups, raises his hand, and Frodo's mouth, he can't speak anymore, and what happens to his sword? And remember, this sword was created by the men of Westernesse, so with spells woven on it, specifically to battle this guy and his forces. It breaks just by the power of his thought. Notice, he doesn't say, I command sword to break, and the sword breaks. That just means shut it. And he shuts it. All right? Now, the leader and the others, they're almost on Frodo's side. And Frodo's passing out, and he sees two things simultaneously. On the far side of the river, he sees these lights coming. One big one. So little flames and one great big black flame. And he also sees in the river suddenly rises. And it takes the shape of horses. And it's galloping down. And then he passes out. Book 2. Many meetings. We're going to spend very little time here. So, he wakes up, there's Gandalf, there's Sam, etc., etc. He's, eventually sees Bilbo and such. And Gandalf explains who Strider really is. Top of 221. You really mean Strider is one of the people of the Old Kings? I thought he was only a ranger. Only a ranger. That's going to get explained a little bit more later on. And then he mentions, bottom of the next page, 222, top of 223, he says, I saw these lights. Gandalf says, bottom of 222. Here in Rivendell, there live still some of his chief foes, Sauron's chief foes. The Elven-wise, lords of the Eldar from beyond the furthest seas. They do not fear the ring wraith. From beyond the furthest seas, remember talking about Tom Bombadil? The world originally was flat. You could sail across the ocean and go to the land of gods. Okay? You can't do that anymore. There are some here in Rivendell who lived there and came back. Like Glorfindel. Glorfindel used to live over there, and he came over here. Later on, we're going to meet Galadriel. She did too. Okay? They do not fear the ring wraiths, for those who have dwelt in the blessed realm, Valinor, live at once in both worlds. Whoa. How do you do that? How do you live over here in the BR, the blessed realm, also called Valinor, and at the same time, you live over here in Middle Earth? Basic law of physics is what? You can't be in two places at one time. Okay? So what does Gandalf mean? He's not talking about necessarily a physical geographical space over here and a physical geographical space over here. What's he talking about? Yeah. The unseen, spiritual, if you want, realm, and the seen or physical / material realm, right? We're going to see this same idea, by the way, in Harry Potter. It's going to get brought up in book 5, and it's going to blow Harry's mind when he makes this kind of connection. Okay? Because the person you would never expect in all the world to acknowledge the wizarding realm blurts something out. And Harry goes, what? And another person goes, what? How do you know that? Right? So, they live at once in both worlds. And against both the seen and the unseen, notice, they have great power. Why? Because, here, let's do it this way. Because now, when I do this when we get to Harry Potter, it'll all make sense. Think of it like that. It's the same world. It's the same place. It's just that some have eyes to see and some don't. And the elves see both. Okay? If Legolas, for example, had been with them when they were attacked on Weathertop, Legolas would have been able to see the Dark Ride as clear as day. No, take that back. No, Legolas wouldn't, because he hasn't dwelt in the Blessed Rock. If Glorfindel had been there, he would have said, Frodo, look to your right. Right. You're right over here, okay? Was that Glorfindel then? Frodo asks. Yes, you saw him for a moment as he is upon the other side. So what does this tell you about elves? Or at least, not the wood elves, the high elves. You want to pick a fight with Glorfindel? No, not really. Okay? You saw him as he exists on the other side. One of the mighty of the firstborn. Firstborn just means elves. Okay? So, they keep talking, Bilbo comes in and such. And we go to the Council of Elrond. Second chapter, second book. One of the most crucial chapters in the entire novel. Okay? And in the Council of Elrond, hold on, make sure I shouldn't be there. In the Council of Elrond, lost my place. In the Council of Elrond, a bunch of people show up. Now does Elrond, get on, his messaging and send texts out to people to come. We're going to have this big meeting. It's going to be like the UN General Assembly, and we need all the input. No. Why do these people show up?
They already been called there.
Who called them?
Kendall?
Nope. Why do Glowin, and his son Gimli show up? Has somebody sent them a message? Nope. They come bearing a message. And they figure, if anybody's going to have the answer to this, it'll be Elrond, the wise, Sam, Merry, Pippin, Frodo, they arrive, for pretty good reason, even though Merry and Pippin aren't at the council. Who else shows up? Boromir, right? From down in Gondor. Why does he go? Because of a dream he had. And the dream said, you want the answer to the riddle? Seek it in Imladris, which is the other name for Rivendell. Why is Strider there? Well, he helped guide Frodo. Why else, though? Oh, there's a couple things there in Rivendell that he's got a shining to. One is a broken sword. The other one isn't actually there at the moment, but is Arwen, daughter of Elrond. All right? So, top of 240, we get names of the people who were there. A younger dwarf at Glowenside, his son Gimli. Beside Glorfindel, there were several other counselors of Elrond's household, of whom Erestor was the chief. With him was Galador, an elf from the Grey Havens. The Grey Havens is where elves of Middle-earth can get on a ship, and they can leave and go to Valinor. Because the ship doesn't just sail the water. Okay? There's also a strange elf clad in green. His name is Legolas. Okay? There's a tall man, fair, noble face, dark-haired, gray-eyed, proud, stern of glance, etc., etc. And Elrond says, this is Boromir. Okay? So they start to talk. And Glowin brings the message that was brought to him, or that he was told to bring. A servant of Sauron came and said, what do you know about Baggins? We will give you the rings of old. Woo! That's a pretty big temptation for a dwarf. So he says, let me get back to you. So they go off to Rivendell. Okay? And Elrond says, top of 242, you've done well to come. You will hear today all that you need in order to understand the purposes of the enemy. There is naught that you can do other than to resist, with hope or without it. But you do not stand alone. You will learn that your trouble is but part of the trouble of all the Western world. Notice, Western world. That's one of the things that led a lot of people to believe, oh, this is mirroring the Second World War, because it was the West against the East. The East being Germany and its allies. The ring. What shall we do with the ring? The least of rings, the trifle that Sauron fancies. That is the doom that we must deem. What? What does he mean by doom? We think of doom as being, death and destruction. No. Doom just means judgment. That's the judgment that we must judge. That's what deem means there. That is the purpose for which you are called. Hither, called, I say, though I have not called you to me. Distant strangers from distant lands. You have come and are here met in this very nick of time, by chance, as it may seem. He's going to keep throwing in these little qualifications. As it may seem, as some call it, in referring to chance and fortune and things like that. Yet it is not so. That is, it's not chance. Believe, rather, that it is so ordered that we who sit here and none others must now find counsel for the peril of the world. So he says, it's not chance that you are here. It was ordered. What's another word for ordered? Predestined, or destined, or ordained. This is how things were meant. And we're back to Gandalf saying, Bilbo was meant to find the ring, and you were meant also to have it, and that should be a comforting thought. So now, Elrond is saying this. And he says, it's up to us to decide what? What does he mean? The peril of the world. Fate. It's up to us to determine what happens to Middle-earth. Okay? So he says, now we're going to have things spoken that haven't been talked about in a long time. So, Elrond speaks. And he says, I remember. And what he remembers keeps going back in time. And Frodo kind of goes, question? Page 243. You remember, but I thought the fall of Gil-galad was a long age ago. Okay? It was, Elrond says. But my memory reaches back even to the elder days. Eärendil was my sire, who was born in Gondolin before its fall. My mother was Elwing, daughter of Dior, son of Luthien of Doriath. Dior, Elwing, Elrond. Okay? I have seen 3 ages in the west of the world, and many defeats, many fruit. I was the herald of Gil-galad. That is, I was at the battle on the slopes of Mount Doom. I was there, he's going to go on and say, when Isildur cut the ring off Sauron's hand. I advised him, get rid of it, but he wouldn't. Okay? Why? Because he says, bottom of 243, Isildur said, this is Wergild for my father and my brother. Elendil, his father, right? And he says, no, Wergild, man price. This is the price Sauron has to pay for the death of my brother and father. Okay? So, we skip a bunch. He keeps going on. Talks. And Boromir jumps up. And Boromir says, blah, 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 blah. Here's what's going on right now. Gondor is protecting everybody else. We couldn't be having this little confab right now if it weren't for Gondor, which sits between Mordor, essentially, and everything else. So he says, I've come on an errand over many dangerous leagues. I've traveled a long way to get here. 110 days I've journeyed all alone. Why is he mentioned? Many hundreds of leagues, 110 days, all by my lonesome. He's emphasizing the arduous nature of this journey. And I did it, you know. So he says, on the eve of the sudden assault against one of our bands of warriors, a dream came to my brother in his sleep. Afterwards, the dream came oft to him again. What does oft mean? Often. His brother, Faramir, had this dream several times, and then it came to Boromir. They told their father, and their father said, Boromir, you've got to ride north. Why Boromir when it came to Faramir first? What are we kind of being told there? The dreamer, not dreamer, the one who put the dream in Faramir's head, wants Faramir to be the one to go north. But he doesn't. Why? Because Daddy's in the way. Why does Boromir go north? Because he's the eldest son, primogenitor. Father dies, Boromir becomes leader after him. Faramir gets nothing, essentially. All right? So he recounts the dream in the little poem. And notice it says, there shall be shown, page 246, a token that doom is near at hand. For Isildur's bane shall waken, and the halfling forth shall stand. He goes, and we didn't have a clue what this meant. Okay? So Aragorn stands up, and notice it says, said Aragorn standing up. It doesn't say, said Strider standing up. Why? Because this is a room full of lords, essentially. And we're going to call Aragorn by his proper name. He says, and here in the house of Elrond more shall be made clear. And he throws the sword that was broken on the table. It says, here's the sword that was broken. And who are you, and what do you have to do in Minas Tirith? What's Boromir really asking? Put that in more modern, colloquial, keep it clean, English. Yeah. Who said you could talk? Now, do you think Aragorn at this point is dressed as future King of Gondor? Has he come in with the white ermine? You know, the long trailing cloak and everything? Nice little circlet on? No. No. Okay? Look at the response. Does Aragorn say, Boromir? No. Who stands up for him? Elrond. I've not watched the movies in years because I absolutely detest them. Describe Elrond and Aragorn's relationship in the film, though. It's not a positive one. It's not a good one. Elrond doesn't come to his defense, if I remember correctly. I could be wrong if I remember correctly. He is Aragorn, son of Arathorn, and he is descended through many fathers from Isildur, Elendil's son of Minas Ithil. Now, some of the people in the room may not have any idea what that means. Boromir does. Like Gimli and Glóin might not have a clue what that means. Sam doesn't know what that means. Okay. What does it mean? You should sit down and shut up. Because the one you are addressing is the future king of Gondor, if everything works out right. He is the heir apparent. In other words, this is like Arthur come back. Okay? He is the chief of the Dunedain in the north, and few are now left of that folk. Frodo, thank God, here. It's yours then. The ring belongs to you. Aragorn, no. Doesn't belong to either of us. Gandalf says, bring out the ring, Frodo. Time has come. And he holds it up. There is a hush, all turned their eyes on Frodo. He was shaken by sudden shame and fear. He holds it up. Elrond, behold Isildur's blame. Behold Isildur's bane. Boromir's eyes glinted. There's only one time I can think of in the entire novel where it said somebody's eyes glint and it doesn't have a negative connotation. And it's in the passage with Tom Bombadil. When Frodo asks, who are you, master? And he says, what? And we're told his eyes glint. Every other time, like when Gandalf's eyes glint, when Bilbo kind of challenges him, says, do you want the precious yourself? His eyes glint. Why? Because he's pissed. Okay? He's not, Boromir isn't angry here. Why are his eyes glinting? We're later going to hear Gollum's eyes glint a lot. Every time they do, it's when he's being tempted by the ring. The halfling. Is then the doom of Minas Tirith come at last? See? Why did I mention doom means judgment? Boromir understands doom in the way I described it at first. Death and destruction. Okay? And Aragorn has to say, the words were not the doom of Minas Tirith. In other words, Boromir, learn to read. Learn how to interpret properly. How do you do that? You pay attention to the words. We're going to see the same idea in the Harry Potter novels. Dumbledore is going to tell Harry at one point something happened to him on the night he got his scar, and Harry is going to interpret that. He's going to put it in his own words. And we know that his own interpretation is valid because Dumbledore doesn't challenge him on it. He doesn't correct him. Later on, we're going to hear somebody say something about Harry, and Harry is going to interpret that for everybody else. And we're going to know his interpretation is correct because the person who originally said the thing doesn't correct him. It's left out of the film, by the way, completely. But leaving this one little thing out, it changes the arc of the story entirely. All right? So, he says, the sword that was broken is the sword of Elendil. It will be reforged now that Isildur's bane is found. Do you want the sword of Elendil to return to Gondor? What would this be akin to in our world? Is there anything that would be similar?
Excalibur being brought to Buckingham Palace.
Bingo. It'd be like somebody, an advisor, going to Boris Johnson, the prime minister, because, the Queen's nothing, really. Constitutionally, politically, has no power. Going to Boris Johnson and saying, now, as there are still British citizens left behind in Afghanistan, do you wish for the sword Excalibur to return to London? Because the sword Excalibur returning also implies the one who wields it. Who is the one who could pull it out of the stone? Arthur. Aragorn isn't literally Arthur. He is, though, the king. The Return of the King is the title of the third volume. Boromir, I wasn't sent here to beg any rewards. Okay. Why not? I just need the answer to the riddle. Right? Why doesn't he say, yes, we'd love to have that sword come back?
He wants to be steward.
Oh, he wants what?
He's going to be steward.
Boromir is the son of the steward of Gondor. The steward has been left in charge until the king returns. Daddy dies, Boromir becomes steward. King returns, steward's out of a job. I want the power. Okay? Yet we are hard-pressed, and the sword of Elendil would be a help beyond our hope. If such a thing could indeed return out of the title of the second chapter of the first book. Out of the shadows of the past. What's he mean by shadows of the past?
Old legends.
Louder?
Old legends.
Old legends. What's the problem with legends? What's a problem with legends? We don't know that they have any veracity, right? We don't know that there's any truth to them. He's saying it's a wives' tale. What's the difference, however, in this scene between what's happened and a wives' tale? What is Strider / Aragorn offered? Physical proof. Here, look at the sword. Examine it for yourself. He looked again at Aragorn and doubt was in his eyes. Now who comes to Aragorn's defense? Fat, old, nearly blind, Bilbo. Probably with food dripping down his, chin, because all they do is eat. And then he sits down, and Aragorn smiles at Bilbo like, you really shouldn't have done that. And then turns to Boromir. For my part, I forgive your doubt. Little do I resemble the figures of Elendil and Isildur as they stand carved in their majesty in the halls of Denethor. I am but the heir of Isildur, not Isildur himself. I have had a hard life and a long, and the leagues that lie between here and Gondor are a small part in the count of my journeys. In other words, don't tell me about your 110 days marching alone. Boo-hoo-hoo. That's like an afternoon walk in the park for me, son. I have crossed many mountains, many rivers, trodden many plains, even into the far countries of Rhûn and Harad where the stars are strange. If you look at the map in the back of the book, you open it up, you got the Shire up here, Gondor down here, Mordor over here, Harad way down here, Rhûn way over here. What's he saying? I've pretty much been to all 4 points of the compass, to the extremes of Middle Earth. And you walked this far. Don't talk to me about long journeys. But my home, such as I have, it's in order. Why does he say such as I have? Because he doesn't have a home. He says, okay, yeah, Gondor has been a stalwart tower. We Rangers of the North have played another part. Okay? And I'm going to skip that third paragraph before the bottom of page 248 and then go to this one. And yet less thanks have we than you. You think we don't give you enough gratitude? Travelers scowl at us. And countrymen give us scornful names. That is, people who live in the country. Strider I am to one fat man who lives within a day's march of foes that would freeze his heart or lay his little town in ruin if he were not guarded ceaselessly. Who is that fat man? Bartleman Butterbur. Yet we would not have it otherwise. That is, we Rangers, we want to keep the Bartleman Butterburs of the world totally unaware and ignorant of the dangers that lie within a day's march of their own. We want to protect them. If simple folk are free from care and fear, simple they will be. And we must be secret to keep them so. What does he mean? He doesn't mean stupid by simple. He just means their cares don't involve the larger cares of the world. Their cares are local, parochial cares. Are the crops going to produce enough for the winter? Kind of a thing. Do I have enough beer on tap at the Prancing Pony? Okay. He says we should keep them that way. And we must be secret to keep them so. And they can't know what we are doing. Why? Why shouldn't they know? Why shouldn't their eyes be opened? Think Harry Potter. Hermione suddenly finds out, oh, house elves do all the cleaning and all the cooking, and she thinks, slavery. We've got to enlighten them into what? How horrible their lives are. Notice, after a little while, J.K. Rowling just totally drops that. Is it because she no longer gives a damn? No. It's because the house elves like their existence. They don't like being told, my life sucks. Because what happens when you're told repeatedly, your life sucks? Your life starts to suck. Okay? He's saying they're better off not knowing. They're better off living in their little bubble. That has been the task of my kindred, while the years have lengthened and the grass has grown. At least you Gondorians, people know you as what? Sentinels. Defenders of the free world and all that kind of stuff. All right? So, he says, the sword will be reforged, and I will come to Minas Tirith. Notice it's not a question. He's not asking permission. I'm coming. You better get ready. All right? So, they keep talking, and Gandalf gives his story. He talks about what he discovered in his researches in the libraries at Minas Tirith and such. And he tells them what he read on the inside of the ring when he heated it in Frodo's little fire. Middle of page 254. Ashnaz Durbatuluk, Ashnaz Gimbatuluk, Ashnaz Thrakatuluk, Agburzum Ishi Kernpatuluk. Notice the kinds of sounds in that. Lots of hard velar sounds. They're not smooth, mellifluous sounds. They're not all vowels. Okay? Elvish has a lot of vowels. And Elrond's like, Gandalf, never before has that language been spoken here. And Gandalf says, let's hope it's not in the future. Says what the ring means. Okay. Legolas blurts out, sorry, we let Gollum go. Don't like to see anything caged. Glowin says, you weren't so kind to me. And we get this little, minor, extremely minor disagreement. If you're familiar with the film, that little minor disagreement almost turns into a free-for-all. All right? So, Gandalf keeps talking, and he relates how he was captured by Saruman. Why is this significant? I'm going to talk about what he talked about, but what's the real significance of his having been captured by Saruman? Saruman is supposed to be Gandalf's superior. He's Saruman the White. Gandalf is Gandalf the Grey. Radagast, who we hear about, never see, unless you're, well, I won't go there. Radagast is Radagast the Brown. There's another one who's not named in the Lord of the Rings, who is so-and-so the Blue. Okay? So he says, I was captured by Saruman. Saruman took me up to his tower, and Saruman says, Radagast played the part I gave to him. He says, I am now Saruman the Wise, top of 259. Saruman Ring Maker, not good. He doesn't really need to say anything else. Saruman of many colors, Gandalf. I looked in and saw that his robes, which had seemed white, they weren't. They were woven of all colors, and if he moved, they shimmered and changed. I liked white better. In other words, kind of showy, a little ostentatious. White. It serves as a beginning. White cloth may be dyed. The white page can be overwritten. The white light can be broken. In which case, it is no longer white, Gandalf says. And he that breaks a thing to find out what it is has left the path of wisdom. That, by the way, is a bit of Tolkien's literary criticism sneaking in. See, prior to writing this, what made Tolkien kind of famous, so to speak. Don't have time for this. In 1936, he delivered a lecture at the British Academy titled Beowulf, the Monsters and the Critics. Okay? Talking about the Old English poem Beowulf. And in that lecture, he addressed Beowulf as a work of literary art, not as something to be mined for information about ancient Germanic beliefs, customs, and practices. See, prior to Tolkien, everybody looked at Beowulf and they took it apart to see what it says about beer drinking and gift giving and customs and ceremonies and such. Tolkien said no, because all those previous scholars looked at the monsters of the poem as being totally irrelevant. Tolkien said, nope, the monsters are at the center of the poem. Okay? And he used an analogy of a tower and said, what people are doing is they're taking the tower apart to see how it's built. But when you take the tower apart, what are you left with? Rocks. And you don't have the tower. You take something apart to figure out what it is, you no longer know what it is. So, Saruman offers Gandalf a choice. What's the choice? Join with me, and together we will rule the galaxy. You know, kind of it, right? How's the choice work? Well, there's this ring. We can take it from Sauron. What's Gandalf's first reply? Let's see. If I can put my finger partly through. Can't be worn that way, right? It can't be. I put my little finger in and you put yours, and we'll wear it together. It doesn't work that way. Are we going to do it? I get it Monday, Wednesdays, Fridays. You get it Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, and Sunday it sits on the mantle. Doesn't work that way. So Saruman goes, okay. I get you. We're not. Okay, so then we'll work with Sauron. And what will we be able to do? Probably after many long years. We can sway him to our position. We can turn, probably a lot of bad stuff's going to happen at first. And look at the language he uses to what, should motivate them. He says, bottom of 259, knowledge, rule, order, that's what we should seek in the world. Okay? And so he says we can bide our time and we can turn Sauron to our will. And Gandalf's like, nope, what do you have to offer me lastly? He says, well, you can rot up here until you change your mind. Okay? I always do this, but I don't have time this time because Monday, Wednesday, Friday's busy. Back in the 1980s, early 90s, well, actually throughout the 90s, the United States Congress had to vote every year. In fact, I think they still do for some countries, to grant what was called MFN, Most Favored Nation trading status. Okay? They had to do that for China every year. Okay? And what that meant was certain tariffs and charges and such that would apply to Chinese goods wouldn't apply. Okay? And then in, what year was it? 89? Yeah, 89 we had Tiananmen Square, where the Chinese, demolished the freedom movement. Granting MFN became really difficult after that, but it still happened. Why? Our State Department, politicians, congressional critters, the whole 9 yards, all said essentially one thing, and they still argue the same idea today. The only way we can have any influence in China is to be buddy-buddy with them and slowly get them to accept human rights, etc., etc. Tell that to the Uyghurs, who are in 1938 concentration camps right now. Right? And we still are treating China the same way. So, Gandalf escapes because of Gwydir the Windlord. And we have 1 minute left. This is done. And they bring up, Tom Bombadil. Why is Tom Bombadil brought up? I didn't talk about this part when we had that chapter. Tom Bombadil asks Frodo to show him the ring, right? Frodo does. Frodo gives it to him without any hesitation. What's Tom do with the ring? And it disappears. And Frodo's like, ah! He also puts it on. And doesn't disappear. He gives it back to Frodo. Frodo puts it on. It disappears. And kind of tries to go, and Tom's like, Frodo, where do you think you're going? And my eyesight isn't that bad. Okay, so the ring doesn't have power over Tom, and it doesn't have power over others in Tom's presence. Tom's not from around these parts, in other words. All right? And we're out of time, so we'll pick up there. Okay, I have not done a quiz yet because I wanted to get you guys essentially on the same track as my Tuesday, Thursday. So I will put up a quiz today that'll be over Book 1, the first half of Fellowship of the Ring. Okay? It'll be due either tomorrow or Friday night at 11:59. So you'll have minimum 36 hours, probably closer to 48. Okay. If you haven't finished Fellowship of the Ring, finish it for Friday. I think we might be able to get caught up